And this subroutine is going to count words, so I'm going to call it word count. We're going to have another parameter here, and this time we want the line that we're going to count words on. So I'm going to call this line as string. Before I write any code, I'm going to put my comments in, which is what you're supposed to do when you're programming. You don't need comments to the end, so I'm going to right above it, put 3 apostrophes and get it to make a block. So I'm going to say counts the number of words in given string. And for my line parameter, I'm going to say the string to count words in. But for my remarks, I'm going to make a comment about that. We're expecting a perfectly formed sentence. Okay? So, expect a perfectly formed sentence. Now, when we're writing subroutines and functions, we tend to give them one job. Alright? If I wanted, I could write another routine that would make sure that a sentence had a single space between each word. Didn't have a load of spaces at the start, didn't have a load of spaces at the end. I can write stuff that did that. And then I could pass the fixed version to this subroutine. Alright, so we tend to try and keep to one job only, if at all possible. Right, in order to count the words, what we need to do is we need somewhere to store how many words we found. So in our global storage, let's add another integer, and I'm going to call it word count. And again, I'm going to set it to 0 so that the reader of my program knows that it needs to be reset to a 0. I'm just going to call it word count. Okay. Right. In order to count the number of spaces, I need a local variable. So I'm going to create one. Spaces as integer. Again, they're whole numbers. So I'm going to create this. Nobody else needs to know about these spaces, okay, apart from our little subroutine that's going to count them. And what we now need to do, if I've got a bit of text, I can't just say how many spaces. I have to manually look at every character in this text. So I need to look at this one and say, is it a space? No. Is it a space? Is it a space? Is it a space? Ooh, it's a space. Add 1 to the number of spaces I found. Alright? Until I've got to the end. And we can do this, we're doing the same task over and over again. So it's going to be another loop. But we're not going to do a while loop this time, we're going to do a simpler type of loop, the one that does a lot of work for us, called a for loop. Okay, so we're going to say for, and this is another opportunity for us to use a little name. Okay, and I'm just going to put I. And we're going to say for I equals 0 to, and then we're going to say spaces, not spaces, line dot length. I'm not going to say, and we're going to say that, and I'll explain why in a sec. Right, we're now getting into proper string manipulation now.
Does it do for anything?
Pardon?
How do you find that? Like, would you write? No.
For the comment for that?
Yeah.
Well, what I would put is look at each character of line. Okay? Now, we need to now get technical and look at what a string actually is. Now, we know it's a bit of text, okay? But the way that the computer stores this, it stores it as a list of characters, which we refer to as a name. So this, in our example, would be the name line. So this is a space in the computer's memory that we're referring to with the name line, and inside the space in memory are a series of characters. Whoops, I've missed my space now. Okay. Now, the first character, the H, is at position 0 in this space in memory. The next is at position 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. If we was to ask how long this line was, it would tell us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 characters. That's how long it is. But we've got to process from position 0 to position 6, which is 7, but we do not want the number 7. We want the numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're saying start at 0, and this loop will automatically go up by 1s. So this loop will happen once, then it will start again because it says next, but I will be increased to the value 1. The next time round the loop it will become 2, and so on, until it gets to the final value, which is going to be the length of the line minus 1, which in our case will be 6. So that will be the last time through. As soon as it gets bigger than that, it stops. But we've got to work out what code we want inside. So we want to check. Where's the button? We want to check that the character we're currently looking at is it a space. Okay, so we can say if, and it's going to be line. Now this looks a bit unwieldy, but don't worry about it. Then that's when we're going to say spaces equals spaces full. Right. What we're saying is, whatever the value of I is, give me the character at that position, one character at that position, and compare it with a space. So that's a space there. If it is a space, add 1 to the number of spaces. Once we get back down to here, we go back up and we look for position 1, position 2. So by the time we've got down to here, we should have looked at each character in that bit of text, and we should have hopefully found all the spaces. But that doesn't give us the number of words. Remember, we said that the number of words was 1 more than the spaces we found. So after that little next line, close mine up a bit, we need to say I can't remember what I called it now. Word count. Now, this highlights a really good problem. I've got a variable called word count. I've also got a subroutine called word count. It doesn't like us having things the same name. Okay? But I want to set the value that is in global storage. So I can write this. I can put the name of the module that I'm referring to. So you'll see that global storage comes up. Then I can put dot, and hopefully I get my word count. So I can say that that equals spaces plus 1. Basically what happens is, really, I should always use this format, module and then the thing of the module using the dot. But Visual Basic lets me get away with not when there's no conflict. When we had that height problem in the first program, we could have got round it, and it did actually say what you could do to get around it, so you could use the word height. You had to put some really weird command in to say like over superseded it or something. But this is what we should have to write, but it's taking the extra stuff out that we don't need to. Okay? So we're saying that thing, word count in global storage, make it equal to the spaces plus 1. Okay? Now, if we go back to the previous subroutine, let's zoom out again so we can just see. At this point, we had our line read in. Yeah? So if we now use our word counter, so we can say word count with our current line. So what that is then going to do is every line that we read in, it's going to run our subroutine. So it's going to look for those number of words for us. Okay, so we're actually creating something quite complex here. Even though there's not much code, it's still working in a very complex way. So we've got a subroutine that we're going to run over and over again, just like we've got a function here that reads text from a file over and over again. So by the end of the running of this, word count will have a value. But we need to make sure that we say global storage word count equals 0. So that when this first starts, we reset the number of words that we've found. We're basically keeping a total for the entire file. How many words were in the file? Hopefully. We'll see if it works. So, if we go back, right back to the form code for the button now, we've actually got some extra information we can display. So I'm just going to add some more concatenation, and I'm going to say words found equals global storage dot word count. Now that line's gone really long, and when you print that out, it's going to have that horrible wrapping thing happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to break it. I'm going to do that. Yeah, just press enter and it drops it to the next line. So what I've done is I've split me code over a number of lines to make it more readable. And you can, if you want, do all this kind of messing about where you line them all up. So it's nice and neat and pretty. Okay, but that is critical. We've got the and that says there's something following this. It just so happens it's on the next line down. Okay, right, just going to run it just to see if it works for me, and then you can test yours and then I'll come around and troubleshoot. That didn't work very well. Interesting. We'll have to have a look at that in a little bit more detail. We'll do some checking.